Hi everyone. Just wanted to show you how to do this spreadsheet exercise. Some of this stuff is going to be new, or some of this stuff will be review for a lot of you. I think you'll know much of it. I'm also going to spend a little bit of time going over some things that I'm not going to specifically test you on this spreadsheet, but that you're going to end up using a lot, and that will speed up your workflow. And so I want to spend some time showing it. What I'm giving you here is I have a list of names. This is a list that I get, for example, at the beginning of every semester with everybody in the class. It's sorted by last name and first name, so I'll show you how what we do with it. But I'm going to want to modify it so that we can get something that looks like this, so that I have a breakdown of how many are juniors versus seniors, a breakdown by major, and then major and econ, how many juniors versus seniors, and so on. We're also going to end up we're going to end up creating a new column here that combines the last name and first name into a single cell. And then the other one that we will do that is hidden right there is we're going to end up having this, it gives us an abbreviation for the major, and we're going to want to end up putting in the full major. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to end up using a VLOOKUP to bring up from this master list over here to see this. So we'll go back over here to the original, and we'll go back over here to the original. So the first thing that and we'll go through these steps. Now I'm going to actually freeze the panes here in just one moment, and then I'll show you how to do this, the ID. But the first thing that we need to do, it says here, is sort by last name and then first name. So what we're going to do up here is go up to data. So typically it's going to start here at home. We're going to go over here to data, and we're going to go click on sort. And what you'll notice here is that it is detected that this range is together, and then it will click this about my data has headers, which just means treat these as column names. Okay, and then what we can say is, hey, sort this by last name. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and delete these levels because this is the way we'll often do it. It will say, so I'm at data, sort. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and delete these levels. So we'll say delete by last name, and then add a level, and then first name. Okay, so it should have Mark Andreessen first. Mark Andreessen was the co-creator of Netscape browser, the very first internet browser. He's now a venture capitalist. And then I have Jeff Bezos, James Bond, Jason Bourne, Sergey Brin is one of the founders of Google, and so on down the line. So now the next thing says create an ID, which is just doing a 1, 2, 3. And we could say, hey, make this equal to this plus 1 or something like that. But I want to show you a couple things. One is that Excel has an autofill feature. So if I end up doing 2, 4, 6, 8, I can now, as long as I grab at least 2 of them, I can grab down, and it will come on down. Okay, it will come on down in 2s and 4s. Same thing if I do 5, 10, oops, if I end up doing 5, 10, 15, of course it'll move in increments. I have to pick up at least 2 of them, but I could do the 3 of them and it'll move it down. Okay, and then the other thing to notice is, if you'll notice down here, if I have multiple of them selected, you'll notice down here on the bottom right corner of the selection, there's this green little square box. And if I double click that, it'll automatically go down to the end of the row, or the end of the column, and it will continue that pattern all the way down. And I'm going to hit Control Z or Command Z to undo that. Okay, and so now, so the way we're going to end up doing that is 1, 2, 3. And then what I want you to do is just go right there. I'm going to hover over that, and you'll notice that my cursor changes kind of from this plus sign to kind of that one right there where it's all black, and double click it, and it will go all the way down. Now the nice thing about that is right now with 38, it's not a big deal, right? I could just go, hey, we'll just drag this down. It's not a big deal, right? But if I had 10,000 of them, as we will shortly, then it does make a big deal, and so we'll want to do that. So that is, we've sorted by last name then first name, and then we've created an ID. Now the next one, number 4, says insert a new column between first name and class, and we're going to call that name. So all I do is I go up here to D, and I'm going to right click and say insert, and that's going to insert a blank row. So if I'm going to hit undo. So again, I'm going to click on D. I've left clicked on it. I'm now going to right click and say insert, and it will have shifted everything to the right, and now I've got this blank row. We're going to call this name, like as in the full name. And now what we're going to do, there's a couple ways to do this, but we're going to what they call concatenate. And concatenate is just a fancy name for combine text together. And so what we're going to end up doing is I'm going to say, we're going to say it's equal to concatenate, okay? And it's this concatenate right down here. They now call it concat. I'm going to use concatenate because that's, but you can use whichever. They work exactly the same. And concatenate, then it says text 1, text 2. So I'm going to point it to Andreessen, comma, Mark. So B6, comma, C6. Okay, and you'll notice it's put Andreessen, Mark, and no space. Okay, if I want to add a space between there, so what they call the arguments are all separated by a comma. So I'm going to now put right there, I'm going to say quote. In fact, I'm going to do 3 spaces. And you'll see now it's putting 3 spaces between Andreessen and Mark. I'm going to now go back and delete it so that it's only a single space. So we have Andreessen, Mark, and then if I want to put a semicolon to split those, I can. But we're going to want to end up putting a comma. And that's how we can do last name, comma, first name. So if I highlight up here, you'll see it's concatenate, B6, comma, I've got this quote, comma, space, quote. That's actually the trickiest part, believe it or not, and then comma, C6. And again, this is just to give us the space and that comma in there. Okay, so now I can use our handy dandy trick from before where I just double click on that square bar and it should take it all the way down, right? And so Justin Trudeau is the Prime Minister of Canada right now. Here is his, right, and it's saying concatenate. Okay, now, so we've done 4 and 5.
Okay, so we've done numbers 4 and 5 here. We're going to now start naming these ranges. And I'm going to show you 2 things for us to be able to do that. First off, let's go up here to column H, and we're just going to call this major. And in a moment, what we're going to do is, so this says INFS, and we're going to bring over information systems. Okay, but before we do that, I need to show you 2 shortcuts. Shortcut number 1 that we'll end up using a fair bit, or that you will end up using a fair bit, is on a PC it is Control Arrow, and on a Mac it'll be Command Arrow. So if I do Control left arrow, you'll notice it goes and then to the right arrow, and then if I do it again, so it's kind of moving between, it's going kind of to the next blank cell and stopping. And so if I go right arrow again, and if I do it one more time, that is the very last column. This is like column 256. Okay, and if I do the same thing going down, Control down arrow, and then if I do it again, it'll take me down to row 1,048,000, which is the very last row in Excel. So you can put in 1,000,000 rows in a current Excel spreadsheet. Okay, so I'm doing Control up arrow and Control down arrow, and on a Mac it's Command up arrow and Command down arrow. And the reason we're going to do that is we want to name some of these columns, and it just makes it easier for us to refer to them, so that instead of saying I'm going from E6 down to E43, I can just refer to this range. So, the second piece of that is, so you've got Control down arrow. If I do Shift and hold my down arrow, I'm selecting multiple cells at once. So the nice thing is I can combine those, and so I'm holding down Control Shift at the same time, and now I hit down arrow, and I have selected all of these cells, all 38 of these cells. Okay, and now I go up, this is called the name box, and I'm going to call this class. Okay, and then we're going to go over, I'm going to do this 06 to P10 and do abbreviation master, and in both cases we are not going to include the header. We're just going to include that. So not abbrev and major, we're just going to do that, and we're going to call that one abbrev master. So I'm going to go up here and type in abbrev _ master. Okay, and once I've done both of those, you'll see up here in the drop down I can select and go over here, or I can select class and it will select all of these. Okay, now, if you make a mistake or we need to modify that, we're going to go here to formulas, and on a PC, I'm going to show you both on a PC. On a Mac, you'll notice I've got this tab over here on what it's going to look like a little bit differently on a Mac, which is that on a Mac, so notice here on mine I have name manager, okay, and on a on a PC I have name manager. On a Mac, they're missing it. All they have is this define name. Okay, and if you pop it up, it looks like, depending on which version you're using, it will either look like this one here in the middle or this one here on the right. And so on, this one you'll notice has add and delete on a Mac. In, I think, newer versions in 2019 and Office 365, instead of doing add and delete, they have this plus and a minus. And then if you want to edit it, you actually edit it right here. And if you want to watch a video of somebody doing it, you can watch this video right over here. When you click on that, it's going to take you to this video right here, which is where I took that screenshot from. And this is a 6-minute video on naming, editing, deleting named ranges on a Mac. So I just wanted to make sure you have resources. You can find that on a Mac. Okay. Now, so we're going to go back here. Let me go to my name manager. Okay. So let's just go ahead and we've named. So you'll notice we've got actually 4, and that's because these are from another. I'm going to go ahead and delete those and delete those. Okay. But let's say I made a mistake in this class 1 or this abbrev master, and I wanted it to really include the header, so that I needed it to go from E5 down to E43. I could hit it there. Okay, and in fact, we want it to go E6. So I can actually delete it, or I can delete it and I can say, look, now I only see this abbrev master. So I can go here again, Control-Shift-Down arrow or Command-Shift-Down arrow on a Mac, and I can call this class. Okay, and now when I go up here to my name manager, I see both of these. Okay, so now we're going to do in G, we're going to call this major abbrev, and again, we're only going to do from row 6 all the way down. This is why sometimes it's easier to freeze the panes. So I'm going to do Control-Shift-Down arrow, and we're going to call that one major_abbrev. Okay, and then we're going to end up naming this one in just 1 second because we need to bring over a VLOOKUP in number 10. Okay, now a couple things. When we do our VLOOKUPs, which allows us to bring over, find a match and bring something over. Okay, we'll go ahead and name this one in a moment, but we need to make sure that, notice that these all start in row 6, okay, and that class and major abbreviation go from 6 to 43, and major abbreviation goes from 6 to 43. If these are not the same size, when we go to do our COUNTIFs in a minute, it'll get an error because these ranges need to be the same size. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is number 10, which is what we want to do is we're going to use a VLOOKUP, and what that allows us to do is find a match. So I'm going to say, look, when I see information systems, I want you to go over here and find INFS and bring back information systems. Okay, when you see econ, I want you to go up here and find the match on econ and bring over economics. Okay, this in SQL, this would be called a join. When we get later on, this is how you a join. In Python and R, this is called a merge. In Excel, they call it we're going to use VLOOKUP. And you can imagine that in this case, there's just 2 columns. Find the match in the first column, abbrev, and bring back, find econ and bring back economics, or find PFP and bring back personal financial planning. You can imagine this could be something really long where this first column had a student ID and then your name, your email, your home address, your cell phone, all that kind of good stuff. So what we're going to do here is we're going to use something called VLOOKUP. So I'm going to say equals VLOOKUP. Okay, and you'll notice here it says look for a value in the leftmost column of a table and then return a value from the same row. Or in the same row, but from the column you specify. So that may sound more complicated. All it means is I want to look up it says lookup value. So I want to look up this INFS in G6, comma. It says where's the table that you want me to do it, and we want to look for it in abbrev master. So I'm going to start typing ABB, and you'll notice it's going to say, hey, there's this abbrev master, comma, and it's highlighted it in red. Okay, column index number says, when I find a match, which column do you want me to bring back? And in this case, there's only 2. So we're going to say 2 because we want it to bring back economics. Later on, we'll be doing, hey, it's column 4, it's column 5. And then on this one, it's going to say, do you want an exact match or an approximate match? Almost always, there will be one exception that I'll show you later. We're going to want to use an exact match. So we're going to say false. Okay, and hit enter. Okay, and then so this should say, hey, info systems, and I should be able to just bring that down. So when I see PFP, it's going to bring back personal financial planning. Okay, and down here, when it says UVST, it's going to see this university studies. So I'm going to double click to make this wide enough. So let's go ahead and look at that again. It says G6, that's the value I'm looking up. Table array is where do you want me to find the match, or like where do you want me to look for it? And I want you to find it in this range that goes from 06 down to P10 that we've called abbrev master. Like this is the master list of abbreviations. When you find a match, bring back column 2, that's the column index number, and we want an exact match. Okay. Now, a very common mistake is what if that you'll notice when you do stuff in life, but I've made this is kind of clean data, but if this isn't an exact match, so let me add a space there. Okay, now it's going to say I'm not finding a match. That's what that NA means. It says, hey, there's no match. Okay, and that's, you say, hey, but INFS, and that's because to us that looks the same, but to the computer that extra space says they're different. Okay, that's a very common mistake. All right, so now we've brought this over. So that allows us to and now we're going to want to call column H, we want to call that major underscore full name. Notice also these have to be underscores. They are not dashes. It won't let you do, I don't believe it'll let you do a dash. It has to be, so if I now go to this, if we go up, if I try major hyphen full name, it's going to say that you can't use a dash. Okay, so we're going to go ahead, I'm going to type that major underscore full name. Okay, and I just prefer to give I could make these shorter. I just prefer to give it a meaningful name, and it makes it easy for us to reference it, especially if you're using it over and over again, and especially if, it makes it also easier to troubleshoot to say, okay, well, where are these matching? And you'll see that here in a second and in the next couple of assignments. So in this first one, then, we want to create something that is now going to give us like junior or like class and count, right? So we want to say how many juniors and how many seniors do we have, and then down here we'll put a total. So to make a kind of a nice underline, I'll show you later on how to adjust these up top, but what we're going to do is right here on the home tab, I'm going to go down and I'm going to do these top and bottom borders right there. And it'll add these up. So the first thing we want to do, we're going to use what's called a COUNTIF. And what we want to do is say, in this column class, how many juniors are there? Okay, and there's a couple ways we could do that. I mean, we could sort this and then count it, manually count it. We could go up here to data and hit a filter and say, hey, how many juniors are there? Say, oh, there are 10 of them. Okay, so we know this should match up to 10, but we don't want to do that. Obviously, we want to use a formula. So the formula we're going to do is what's called COUNTIF. So I'm going to say is equal to COUNTIF, and we're going to use this singular one, COUNTIF singular, not COUNTIFs. And all this means is COUNTIF just says it can only have a single condition. COUNTIF says I can look for juniors who are also finance majors. Like I can have multiple conditions. Okay, and so we're going to say, it's going to say the range and the criteria. And this has always been a little backwards to me. The range says, what's the column you want me to look this up in? So we're going to call that class, right? And that is going to be our E6 down to E38. And then what it's going to say is, what do you want me to find? In this first one, we're going to actually type in the letters junior, And you can type it lowercase, and we'll see if it's case sensitive. Okay, and it's not case sensitive. There are 10 juniors, just as we saw. Okay, now again, you'll note, so again, the formula here is looking for junior within E6 to E43. Okay, now again, you'll notice if I accidentally put a space here, it's going to say I don't find any matches. Same thing over here. If this first one has an extra space, it's not going to count that as a match. Okay. Later on, I'll show you kind of ways we can find this and look for it, but that's just a very common mistake. Okay, the next one, we're going to do the same thing. So COUNTIF, okay, same thing, class. But in this case, I don't want us to point, like I don't want us to spell senior. That kind of defeats the purpose. I want us to point it to cell J7. And that way we can copy and paste it down. Okay, and then up here I'm going to go ahead and we're going to go to home, and I'm going to auto sum this up. Okay, and if your computer, if you don't have this on full screen, sometimes you'll notice that auto sum is just shortened down to just that little, that's a sigma, which just means summation, but it'll shorten that down. So if you don't see auto sum but just see that sigma, it's the same thing. So that should add up to 38. Okay, the next one now we're going to do major. So I'm going to go down, I'm going to do this in J11. So I'm going to say major and then count. And I'm just going to copy and paste this. So now we're going to change class to major. Okay, and now in this one, this is going to be, we could just type in econ, finance, and so on, but I want to show you this. What we're going to do is go up here to, I'm going to go to G6 and Control-Shift down arrow. So I'm going to grab all of them, and I'm going to paste them under here in major. Actually, I want the full major. I don't want the abbreviation. So let's do this. I'm going to go here to major. So I'm going to do H6 to H43. Okay, and this is going to be a two-part process. I'm going to paste it here, but if I paste it right now, it's going to give me an error, and that's because it's pasting the formulas. And so when I go look to this one, it's looking at that blank cell. So I'm going to Control Z. So what we want to do is when we go here to paste it, so I'm going to click on J12, I want to go up here to paste, all the way down to paste values. Okay, and now you see it's actually pasted, not the formula, but the actual values. Okay, and now what we want to do is, I'm going to go up here to data, because you're like, hey, well now I've got 38 of them, that doesn't do me any good. And what I want to show you is one of the, VLOOKUP is like the most useful function that you will use over and over and over again as an analyst. The second one that you're going to do is we're going to go up here to data, and we're going to remove duplicates. Okay, so it says, do your data have headers? And they do. They have these row headers, major and count. And it says, hey, where do you want to have, where do you want me to count duplicates? In this case, it's not, since count is blank, it's not going to matter. So I'm going to leave both of them selected, but we could unselect that. Okay, and it's going to say, hey, we've got these 5. And then if you're a little OCD like me, you want these in alphabetical order. And so the way we do that, again, is we're going to go up here to data, sort, and I want to, it says has headers, and so we're just going to sort by major from A to Z. Hit OK. So now econ should be first. Okay. So now if I want to get my count, and again, let me, because I often have to show this a second time in class, let me show both these steps again. Okay. I've pasted all this in. We go up to data, remove duplicates. Okay. And then to be able to sort them, I go up here, data, sort, and we're going to sort by major, A to Z. Okay. Now what we want to do is count how many. I'm going to go ahead and hit a, so that we've got our summation here. Okay. And now we want to count how many are in each major. And if we've done it correctly, it should add up to 38. Okay. So now we're going to do is equal to COUNTIF, singular. Okay, and this is part of the reason we've named the range. I want to say, okay, we're going to look for it in this major full name. Okay, And I want it to say how many of them are econ majors, economics majors, and hit enter. Okay, there's 2 of them. And now I can just drag that down, okay? And now I can auto sum. And if we've done that correctly, it should add up to 38. If it doesn't, then what I suspect the first place I would check is to see is I would go up here and look at this major full name and make sure it goes from H6 down to H43. And so you can check it by going to the name box here, or sometimes it's easier to go up here to formulas, and either on a PC it's name manager, or you go up here to define name, and you look at, okay, all of these should start in row 6. Okay, and then class, major abbreviation, and major full name should go down to 43. And if they don't, then that's where I would check first for your error. Okay. Now, then our next one is we're going to do major, but here we're going to do junior, senior, and total. Okay, and I'm going to just, if I copy it here, I can again go up to home, paste, and in this case, if I want to paste, if I just want to paste the formatting, it's this one that's got the percentage sign and like a paintbrush. Okay, so now I've got major, and I'm just going to copy and paste this down. Okay, and now if we've done this correctly, we'll go ahead and put our top and bottom bars. We should end up with 10 juniors and 28 seniors for a total of 38. Okay, so now we're going to use the more sophisticated function, which is COUNTIF, or COUNTIFs rather. Okay, with the S. Okay, and this one says criteria range 1. Like here we want to say your major is an econ and your class standing is a junior. Okay, so we'll repeat the one that we did before. So we're going to say major full name, okay, is equal to economics, okay, and then your class, in this one, just to make it easier to troubleshoot, I'm just going to say is equal to junior, and I'm going to just type it in. Okay, and there are 2. Okay, and if we add that up, that should add up to 10 if we've done that correctly. Okay, now notice up here, I want to copy and paste this over, and it says 0, and I know that is not correct. And well, actually that is correct, but that's just because there's 0 of them. And same thing if I went here and over, it's always going to find zeros. And the reason for that, I'll do it on this one because I know the finance one, that is not correct. But and that is because if I click in here, you'll notice it's looking for, I'll click here first. It says major full name, so find within, H6 down to H43, I want to find where it says finance. Okay? Now, when I copy and paste this over, you'll notice instead of looking for finance, it's looking for it here in K22. Okay? And so there's a couple ways to solve this. The easiest way is for me to just grab, so not on the corner, but this top or bottom part of the bar, and left click and drag it over and hit enter. And now it's going to say, hey, I'm looking for, and we need to change it to senior. Okay, so there should be 19 of them. But the reality of what we want is, I want to change, so you'll notice up here it just says J23. Okay, I want to change that from what is called a relative reference to an absolute reference, meaning I always want it to stick there in J23. And the way you tell Excel to do that is by putting a $sign in front of it. So if I put a $sign in front of that J, okay, when I now copy and paste that over one to the right, and I'll change this to senior, you'll notice it's still pointing to J23. It didn't move J to the right. It stayed there. Okay, and that's actually what we want. Okay, and if I put something to the left of the 23, what that would mean is if I copied it down, it would still point to J23. Like it would still be pointing to that row 23. So sometimes you have to say, do I want it to stay in column J or do I want to stay in row 23? Okay, but if I do that, now I can drag this down. And in fact, I'm going to copy and paste it up to this one. And then we need to make sure, so I could have pointed it up to senior. Instead of typed in senior, I could have pointed it up to L21 or whatever that is. It makes it a little bit tougher to read, but notice up here now it's easy for me to say, look in major full name and find J22, which is finance. Look in class and find senior or SR, okay? And so when you get complicated formulas, this one isn't even that complicated, but if you have multiple criteria, or if we were pointing to this from a different page, it makes it much easier for us to refer to it and not make a mistake. And it's also much easier to troubleshoot. So that's why I tend to name ranges. And it's really easy to do. Okay. So now we've got, so these are saying, hey, the formula doesn't look like the one that's next to it. And that's because that one doesn't have the $sign. So if I control paste that, okay. Same thing here. This is saying, hey, this has dollar signs in J23, and the ones above it and below it don't. And so, are you sure you want to do that? And we're just going to leave that. So I'm just going to say auto sum. Okay, so that should be 10 and 28. And now what I'm going to do is say is equal to sum. We just want to add these up. Okay, and then auto sum again, so that it adds to, we've got 10 juniors, 28 seniors, 38 students total, and then I've got 2 econ majors and 26 finance majors, and on the way down. Okay, so we've done a number of things so that we can allow Excel to do the work for us and make this very quickly. So what you're going to now do is you're going to rename this. You're going to add your name to it so that I can and upload it. I'll show you how to do that. And then in the quiz, it's going to ask you a few things like, were you able to name the range? And then how many, it'll ask you some questions. For example, how many finance majors are there? Or how many finance majors who are seniors? So, all right, good luck. And I hope that helps.